Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, I think we might end up talking corporate escape today because we've got a guest who specialises in the subject.
She does. And her name is Carolyn Parry, and she spent quite a lot of time in Wales, which, you know, we shouldn't really hold that against her. You're not Welsh by any chance, are you, Carolyn?
Yes, I am. Yes,
I
know I sound like I'm English. I grew up in the southeast of England, so I had the southeast of England conversion kit accent fitted at a very early age. But all my relatives are from the Barry and Cardiff area. My husband's from the Rhondda, and I'm now very lucky to live about half an hour south of Aberystwyth, near the Welsh coast. On Cardiff
now, you
Bay.
said Rhondda, a bit like they do in Madrid when they say gracias. And,
yeah, Rhondda.
It's Rhondda, so that is interesting. I've never heard it pronounced that way before.
Double D is a different consonant in Welsh, and it's pronounced the. So it's
wow.
Rhondda. So every time you hear Rhondda, everybody in Wales, 3.1 million people in Wales, go, not again. Rhondda.
Well, you know, I think we've reached a pinnacle in this podcast. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll go now because, I mean, it's not going to get any better than that. I mean, you've got some fantastic information there.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
hoping there might be a bit more.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. If we really must. But Carolyn, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I am a career and life coach. I spend my life helping aspiring and established professionals to create working lives they love that are based on purpose. And quite often that includes escaping from a corporate life. So I've worked in careers now for coming up to, dare I say, nearly a quarter century. But before that, I worked for about 17 years in industry. So I worked in property publishing and international software. And then I went at 39, what am I doing here? Get me out. And spent quite a while trying to fathom out what I wanted to do. And eventually it led to me taking up the call to help other people do the same thing.
Well, that's a really noble thing to do. I mean, anything that you can do to help other people, and the beauty is you're actually charging them to do it. So that's really clever. I mean, Kevin helps people, but he don't charge. What's wrong with you, Kevin?
Oh, this is the problem. This is the problem.
Oh, I'm sure you charge for some help. Consultancy, they call it, don't they? Isn't it consultancy? Yeah. And actually, before I used to work at a university, I used to work at Aberystwyth University, and we never charge students, of course, and graduates. So it depends where you are in the world of careers as to whether you get paid directly or indirectly.
Do you find it easier, or when you look back, do you find it easier sort of advising a sort of a freshman student, or maybe a student coming to the end of their course, compared to somebody who's perhaps had some experience and is a bit stuck? Are there contrasts?
To be really honest, not a lot, because they're both stuck in their own ways. They're both lost, typically. So the art of good career coaching is to help somebody understand who they are and then start to take that information, that insight, and look outwards at where that would fit in the world of work. That can that can be connected with things like strengths, talents and skills. It could be to do with personality. It could do with interests, curiosities, passion, wanting to make a difference. I do a lot to help people understand that if they want a career that's got longevity, then taking one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are a long way off being completed. They were originally the 2030 goals, and there's research by Social Index Imperative that says probably 2084, which is 10 years more than it was before COVID. So that was 2073 for some of those UN SDGs to be met, now 2084. So to come back to your original question, the only difference is that sometimes those who've been in the workplace longer may have more of a lack of confidence in a way, or more entrenched in where they are and more fear about changing. But actually, I've worked with lots of young people who are terrified about what they're going to do because they see it as having to make one choice and being stuck there forever. So, and there's lots of misnomers around careers. I think we're one of the most misunderstood professions. And if I'd had a fiver for every time anybody says to me, oh, you're a careers advisor. Careers advisor told me to go and be a insert. For instance, I had a pro-vice chancellor one day say to me, oh, careers advisor told me to go and be a plumber. Look at me now. I thought, I think something got lost in translation there. So we are a maligned, unfortunate profession, but we are a noble profession, to use your word, Graham. And we are all very privileged to help people change their lives for the better. And we only go this way once, don't we? So we might as well make it a journey worth the effort and worth the enjoyment.
Yeah, I mean, is it enjoyable to you, Kevin, when you, or was it enjoyable to you when you got your last piece of careers advice?
Well, Actually, I suppose, when was my last piece of careers advice?
Mm.
It was all informal stuff, and it was around the point that I did actually leave corporate.
Mm.
I actually had a very, very good boss from a point of view of his people skills, and sat down and had a long chat with John, which was around the subject of what should I do next. And he pointed out quite a number of things that he knew I was good at that
Mm.
I probably didn't necessarily acknowledge myself. I think sometimes you're the last person to see your own core strengths.
Mm.
Absolutely. That's Jahari's window, isn't it? We have knowns, we have unknowns, we have things that we're blind to, other people know, and then there's just that whole black area that nobody knows anything about that is an area of possibility, if you like. So I'm glad you had wise advice from somebody who knew you well, because that's quite important too. I have in the past done quite a lot with teenagers and parents, and the biggest challenge there, and that of course informs the young people piece, is that parents are trying to give youngsters advice to keep them safe, healthy, happy, and financially independent. And they're giving that advice looking forward using their rearview mirror, because they're basing all their advice on when they were 30 years earlier navigating the same transition, and the world has changed significantly since then. So the commonality between youngsters and older people, equally lost, sometimes more entrenched because they've been in a place longer, and there are some challenges for older people around, and I say older people, not in the university sector now, around the impact on income of change, the risk to the direction that you take, which any good career coach would explore with you to help you understand. Maybe you phase that, actually. You go more to a part-time work or whatever. You can look at consultancy. The trouble with consultancy is, as having done it in a previous life, whilst working in business, is that consultancy is very much up and down, whereas product-based business is much more even, although it has seasonal norms, but you can usually predict those, good old Google. Whereas consultancy is more unpredictable, and sometimes it has a shelf life depending on how long you're in an industry as well. So there are lots of options for older people. There's, we're in the world now of lifelong learning. If you look at the World Economic Forum reports, we need to be doing upskilling 50% of the people in the next five years or so, because of the pace of change with AI and so forth. And so we're all going to be learning, and most people will not be retiring before they're knocking on 70 now.
Well, that's
that was a bit of a downer to end on, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
No,
that
not
actually
really.
means a journey of great excitement and being able to still make a difference you want to in the way that works for you. And you don't have to stay living in the place you're in. You can move, which might mean your salary demands are less as you're older. We resettled back from Sussex to Wales and discovered we could have a house twice the size for slightly less than we had paid in Sussex, and that made lifestyle much better. So, and with the internet these days, there are all sorts of models, aren't there, for business running through a gig economy or using internet to be able to consult anywhere in the world or do anything you want to do. So lots of opportunity that wasn't there these days.
And Graham, from that point of view, what you and I both do is a classic example that you can be anywhere talking to anybody. And you and I, we've barely met. What, 5, 6 times now? Yet we've done 400 podcasts.
Yeah. No, and yeah. No, you are right. I mean, we do one every week, and we might record more in a week, but basically one was released every week. And I think we have that. You mentioned the word as well, Carolyn. You mentioned the word curiosity, I think, and one of the things that I think we have as a sort of a gene is curiosity, curious about people, because they've all got a story. And I guess what you're particularly good at in this sort of skills unraveling is almost getting into the DNA to sort of draw out their particular story and make it believable to them that it kind of is heading potentially in a particular direction.
I love that phrase, not least I've got a podcast called Change Your Story, and I'm actually writing a book with the same title. So for me, everybody has a story. They have a unique story. And I think most people don't necessarily recognise they are in charge of writing that story and they have control over it. So they can scope it in any direction they choose to, if they are awake and making those choices rather than being more likely to sleepwalk their way through life. Everybody does have a story, and the challenge, yes, you're right, is to help that person understand themselves, because there's an exercise I do with most of my clients, I do it in my programs, and that's, tell me about yourself in 3 to 5 words, and you can see the colour drain from their face. Because they know who they are intrinsically, but articulating it is actually quite a challenge. And so when you're starting from that point, being able to make an informed choice as to which direction you go in it's actually really quite challenging. So I often talk about, I'll talk about two particular metaphors. One is to do with, people coming round for dinner. If you know what they want to eat, you can make a dish that's appropriate. You don't need all the 1,000 ingredients you might have in your cupboard, or 5 or 10 or however many there are. Similarly, when you're going to buy you're going to buy something around the shops, we've all had the experience where we've gone and bought something because we had an emotional need. We wanted to spend a bit of money on ourselves for something. And we bought something, and then we've had to take it back because we got home and realised it was wrong. And if you do that in a career context, that's much more serious than taking a purchase back to get a refund. Whereas in a shopping context, go back to that, when you're walking around shops, if you know you need a pair of shoes or boots for a particular event, the make, the colour, the size, the style, what you're going to wear them for, what sort of price you want to spend, you've probably got a mental picture already that enables you to look around the shop, and the shoes will leap off the shelf and you go, hello, I'm here, try me. If they're there, you put them on, pay the money and go. That's because you're really clear. And most people aren't clear about career stuff. They tend to go, oh, that sounds quite interesting, I'll give that a go. And people will serially bounce, and then they'll end up getting further and further away from who they are very often. And then there will become there'll be some form of burnout or crisis, or what am I doing here? They can become quite disaffected at work, for instance, because they're unhappy where they are, and that leads to a difficult place as well. So
you are looking at, I think you said professional people, though, aren't you? So in other words, you're not actually providing your services to the great unwashed, are you? I mean, the rest of us. So basically, those people potentially have a different way of managing this situation, because they don't have the ability to pay for your services and so forth. So they probably figure a lot from Google or Instagram or God knows where.
Well, there are not in England. There is a national careers service, which is actually underneath that brand. There are independent businesses that have contracted to supply career coaching and guidance. So there's one in England, National Careers Service in England. There's Careers Wales in Wales. There's Skills Development Scotland offers support for Scotland, and then there's an organisation in there's Northern Ireland Careers Direct as well. So there are national careers services that will help anybody. They tend not to help professionals as much. They are not particularly geared up for, depends on them. And I actually did some training with Careers Wales just as COVID hit, because of the redundancies that came, to help them support professionals and have more experience and confidence doing that. They've got all the same skills, they've got the same ability, they just didn't have the experience with that client group in the same way. And that's, I could say that about any careers service. Typically, they're in doing a lot with young people in schools and in colleges. In universities, you have members of the Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services who are highly skilled, like any other member of Career Development Institute that I happen to be president of, and on the professional register for. We've all done level 6, level 7 training. So postgrad training to be able to work effectively with individuals. Just different parts of the system work with different profiles. So I work with anybody who comes and wants help.
Yeah, no.
As long as I feel I can help them. So
it wasn't really a dig. It was just if your services are aimed at people who've done reasonably well in life, then it's a different kind of. They should have the money to be able to afford your services, and it's those people below, because in an age where artificial intelligence is going to supplant many jobs. They're not necessarily going to be, well, they might be, but they're not necessarily going to be professional jobs, are they?
There will be professional jobs, but there'll be different jobs in many cases. So I think you're absolutely right. I was reading something the other day about the reason that we still have the big demand for radiographers, although we have artificial intelligence for things like breast cancer analysis and so forth, is because people expect to see people there. There are lots of industries that have been affected. There's a report just come out from the International Labour Organization, which is talking about how ChatGPT is causing a change. ChatGPT in particular, or other brands are available, clearly. Looking at things like augmentation rather than automation. so where you're working in conjunction with AI. Lower middle income men are most likely to be affected by that, and then higher roles with automation that takes it over. That will mainly affect women, according to this report. But we'll be using AI. I'm already using AI, I use it with my clients. I teach them how to use it. So I was working with one the other day who was talking about wanting to work in the area of life underwater, so the UN SDG that relates to life underwater. And we were using it to really do some quite rapid and good quality deep dives, if you'll pardon the terrible pun, I didn't intend that at all, deep dives into what the problems are around, particularly around plastic, which he's particularly interested in, plastic in oceans and waterways and how you prevent that. So we were using ChatGPT and Bard, and the level of information and content that was coming up was quite rich. Of course, you have to check it's true, which is why using both as a comparison is not a bad thing to do. But to come back to your point about how do people get support, there is free support at point of need for anybody in the UK. So anybody could walk into their local careers service, by and large. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but usually they can walk in and get support. I'm talking, and if you're running a business, as you both well know, you have to have a focus on who you're trying to attract. I am very fortunate in life. I don't have to charge huge amounts for it, and I don't actually believe in charging huge amounts for it. That's my personal ethical stance on life. So I'm actually pretty affordable. So if I was based in London with London overheads, then I would have to charge a lot more for the same service. But you mentioned about working online together. I've worked online with my clients since I set my business up when I left the university, which was 2015. I've been working online since then doing this. So I think the important thing is that you have to look at value beyond price. So people will quite happily spend £1,000, £1,500, £2,000 on a 2-week holiday and then come back to a life that makes them miserable for 50 weeks of the year. And you have to go, does that make sense? Why are you creating a life that you have to take a holiday from? Why aren't you creating a life that you actually enjoy, a working life that works for you, that you enjoy, that enriches you? Because if you're doing stuff that you're naturally well disposed to do, that you're excited about and curious about, it's naturally enriching. So unless you've had a particularly bad day due to circumstances beyond your control normally, you should at the end of the day you shouldn't feel depleted. Let's put it that way. So I can do a coaching session with a client and I'll walk out feeling as light as a feather and feeling fantastic because it's the place that I really love working. Whereas if I've got to chair a meeting, I can't say that I'm necessarily coming out with the same vim and vigour at the end of it. And that's where career choice comes in, is helping somebody understand their natural strengths and predispositions, where they want to make a difference to, who they want to work with, in what sort of context, and what impact they want to leave behind. That makes some sense?
Yeah, I'm really enthused by the fact that you are able to offer your services at a more reasonable rate because you frankly have got to a stage in life where you don't have to charge top dollar for your services. But I think that's one aspect to this. The other aspect from my point of view is the fact that there is in my view, I think the average bloke would be probably asking his mates down the pub or his social, maybe his father or mother or whatever, somebody who they trust to give some advice. And to your point, that advice might be old fashioned. It might be aged a bit. And I think if you had to sort of intervene in one of those situations where Johnny has spoken to his dad, Kevin, and Kevin's a guy with all that history. What would you be doing for both of them to actually get the right kind of result for Johnny?
Okay, so I'd start with values.
Right.
Because for me, that's where it all flows from. So when you think about a career, what difference do you want to make? What matters to you? That's where I start. When you think about career, work, job, what matters to you? So that's the bit about, well, I really want, honesty matters, this matters, that matters. And usually when you drill down into somebody's values, there'll be one or two key values, anchor values, if you like, that you go, let's explore that a little more. So somebody will say something like, I want to help people.
Yeah.
Okay. How specifically would you like to help me? If I could wave a magic wand and you could help absolutely anybody do anything, what would you like to do? Who would you like to help? And it'll start to flow. And actually, I haven't met any client in 20 something years of working who hasn't deep within them got a sense of the direction they want to go. They just maybe have suppressed it as not being possible, not being appropriate, somebody not approving, not knowing how to do it. All of those things, good quality career professionals can help individuals. So I'm going to stick a plea in here that if you need help, go to your local career service, whether that's a careers advisor, coach, consultant, a career development professional, whatever name they go under, either in your school, your college, your university, on the high street, or find a private practitioner, and you'll find us all on the professional register for the Career Development Institute, which is cdi.net, and you'll be able to find those of us who are appropriately and professionally trained and qualified who can help you unpick the mystery of what you want your life to be, your working life to be.
So given that all sounds really sensible, and it's probably going to help most people, because it's almost like the 80-20 rule. You probably kill off most of the 80% with that one question. So basically, you know broadly which direction you go in. So at least you've got a better chance of success.
You start to get there, but then you've got to look at other things like skills, personality, context, all that stuff. But what's the barrier to training and getting there? For instance, what's the labour market information about it? Is it expanding or contracting? Particularly important at the moment. There's a national shortage of people to do thatching. If anybody's listening and wants to find a practical job, it's a dying art, and yet the buildings are still there. Yeah. So you have to, and that's called labour market information, and that has to be, and you have a labour market intelligence where somebody helps you to interpret it as well. That's really important to make a wise choice, because you don't want to choose something like, petrol forecourt retailer.
Yeah.
Given that might not be there in 10 years' time in the same way.
Well, I don't know. Maybe,
adapt,
I don't know.
But you know what? You know the point I'm making.
Not there for me. I don't know if electric cars are all the rage in Wales, because presumably you don't have that many charging points.
I will confess I live in a very rural location and it snows. I've got a 4x4. But I don't travel. I'm very green in other things, but I do have to use a 4x4, particularly in the winter. So
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah,
you two would be the kind of people
has just
who
put 2 electric charging points in our village, Graham. So.
Yeah, but you two would be the kind of people who preach about climate change, and then you'd hop on a jet to Davos, and no, you would. Whereas
I join it electronically.
I'm in an EV, but I don't preach about climate change because I don't believe it's a thing. So from that point of view, at the end of the day, I do take your point about the industry, though. That makes a lot of sense, because it's, back in the day, I was advised, and back to your principal's comment, but it was banking, which, I'd rather be stabbed in the eye and forced to support Man United, and then coal mining. And of course, the person must have known there wasn't a coal mine within 50 miles of where we were living. So, end of the day, I just find it all a little bit sort of, we have moved on, and you've already demonstrated that. And a lot. But you're going to say but?
No, I was going to say a lot. We have moved on a lot as a profession, significantly. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we've got as a profession. Everybody, because they have a career and a CV, believes that they are ultimately perfectly qualified to give high quality, impartial, independent career guidance and advice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to the man in the pub and say, I've got a health problem here, what do you think it is? And expect to get a qualified opinion. Yet people do it with career stuff all the time. Yeah, that's me on my hobby horse, my soapbox.
No,
but they do.
Stay on that for a minute, because one of my friends came around the other day and said, Graham, I've got to do a 2-minute video. And I said, okay. And it was for a charity. And it was for the leader of that charity. And okay, well, so we helped produce it, and it was under 2 minutes, etc., and then it's hosted and sent to them. Is that a thing?
What is doing that 2-minute pitch a thing?
On video nowadays, because I haven't really.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of the big recruiters in particular are expecting people to do video interviews where they get questions on screen, they answer that, there's nobody the other side, that gets sent off.
Slightly different from doing a video in advance.
Yeah. Well, this is the same. This is that. So a lot of recruiters will say, we're going to send you a link. You answer the questions that are on screen. Then that recording gets sent back and analysed later. The problem with that is that's often being done with AI. And AI is only as good as the unbiased coding that happens with it, which is one of the challenges. I'm not anti-AI at all, but we have to be careful that it sits with the same code of ethics that as a career development professional I have to abide by, which is an 11-point code, which includes transparency, impartiality, honesty. So you were talking about coal mines. I'm not going to diss you working in a coal mine or anybody working in a coal mine or anywhere else from a professional point of view. From a personal point of view, rather, what I have to do is help you understand the implications of that choice. Like, it's 50 miles away. You may not be able to do it in 5, 10, 15 years' time. It comes with some health challenges. Have you thought about all of that? Let's have a look at pros and cons, and we'll make a list.
Yeah.
And see how it suits you and the life that you want to have. You know, can you get down the gym easily? Can you have the holidays that you want? Will it give you the standard of life that you want? Do you need to go and retrain for all of those sorts of questions?
Oddly enough, I managed to do all that. I did all that processing within about a second, and waved a finger in their general direction, because, to be honest with you, it was a nonsense piece of advice. However, life's moved on.
Yes,
and
please.
Your analysis of those things is brilliant, and you've actually created Career Alchemy.
Yep.
And it's careeralchemy.co.uk, and on that site you can do lots of things. I mean, not only you could even do a job search.
Yeah.
How do you manage that then?
So I have partnered with an organisation called ZipRecruiter. And so that software is embedded into the website. So anybody coming to that page now, which is available off the homepage, you can just put what you want in there, and ZipRecruiter software will give you answers within your parameter searches, whether that's a location, a role, or whatever, in the same way that you could go to Indeed or any of those. Because you need to provide people with access to information and the opportunity to find roles. So that's why that's there.
I'm seriously impressed, Kevin. I don't know about you. I mean, your next job, Kevin, probably won't be an administrator, customer services, German-speaking hybrid in the Bradford area. It's not going to be that, is it?
No, it might be the only job left with AI going the way
it
true.
Is. It's true, especially German-speaking. But no, I actually think it's. I didn't realize the depth of your website when I kind of took a look at it. I mean, the job search thing is really clever. Credit to you for that. I like the idea that you have a range of services, and it's not just for people. It's for people within organisations. So you would go along to an organisation to do what exactly?
So, for instance, a few years ago, Aberystwyth University was going through a restructuring. There were 200 odd posts potentially going. I went in and ran the redundancy outplacement type activities. Very much, who are you? What have you got to offer? Let's have a look at you reapplying here. If you are, CVs, applications, interview technique, and what else if you're not. So all of that stuff. We ran 40 sessions, 6 through the medium of Welsh. A colleague of mine came, and one of my affiliate associates came and delivered through the medium of Welsh. And that's just about helping people deal with that change. Other things that I do, I go in and I do keynotes for organisations. I worked with EY to run, this is when I was working with teenagers and parents, to run workshops with them to help them work together to make effective choices. But I do things like I can't do it, unfortunately, but somebody asked me to go and do a keynote for a higher education organisation a couple of weeks ago. I've run my programme through for graduates for universities.
I like the idea of you going in to help people in a where their jobs have been made redundant. I mean, that happened to me when I was about 21, I think 22, 21, 20, no, a bit older, maybe 24. And Lander Associates came along, and they were from London, and a sort of a white-haired gentleman, very well dressed, basically gave me some real advice, probably the best advice I'd ever had in this area. And that as you heard me explain what he did, he said, "You are not redundant. Your job is."
Job is, absolutely. You have to separate the two.
And that separation has always stuck with me, because that really is a mindset that enables you to get through all this rubbish. Yeah. But it's when somebody feels redundant, all kinds of other nastiness goes on in their heads.
It does indeed. And actually the smile that I had on my face when you were saying that was a smile of recognition, because one of the things that I took everybody who went through that course on, I'm very happy to say that I think there were probably only one or two situations where people had to take the redundancy. Everybody else found something else, either within the university or outside, and moved on happily. But one of the first things I talked about in every session that I ran was the emotion of the circumstances. And I talked about Kubler-Ross, which you may know as the change curve.
Yeah.
And it's the stages that you go through in grief or significantly emotional experiences, which is anger and denial. It's not happening to me. And then you go through that whole range. You have to go through that bit of being stuck at the bottom of the curve, rebuilding, starting to look at possibilities, and then assimilating what's happened and being able to move forward. So that change curve, the Kubler-Ross change curve, if you can give people an understanding of that, they now have labels to express the emotions they're feeling. If you can label an emotion, you can understand it, and you can go, okay, I'm at that point. Now I know what's going on. Maybe I need to look at getting to the next stage, which is not sitting at the bottom of the curve, but actually going and doing something that moves me forward. Because at the end of the day, I'm supporting me, because that's what we all have to do. And we all have to have career management skills. We have to have those well developed, and I don't think there's enough attention paid to helping people to do that, actually, because I think we grew up, a lot of us, with the job for life concept, which obviously has gone, but people still talk about it as if it's still there. But it went 10, 15, 20 years ago, and people haven't really necessarily gained the career management skills they need to be able to horizon scan and go, oop, trouble at mill over there. There's something coming. I better do something, oh, actually, if I want to get there, I need to go and do this bit of training to get me there, or I need to volunteer for this project that'll get me that bit of experience so I can pivot over this way. You asked me earlier about, working with organisations, and I do work with organisations, but my main focus these days is working with individuals.
Yeah.
Because for me, there's an absolute joy in working with somebody who is sitting there. I mean, I don't think I've got one of those faces, but a lot of my clients end up in tears, and they're usually when we've got to the point where they've been able to really open up.
Well, that's just after you've shown them the bill. I mean, they would.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because actually, Graham, they'll have paid before they even talk to me and have a session, I'm afraid. So
you are then. They're already in tears. But,
hang on a minute. Let me backtrack a minute. I do two things for my clients. The first is I never take them on until we've had a conversation. So I always do a discovery call, because I want to make sure they're comfortable with me. Because if the relationship isn't there, it's not going to get any better on the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth coaching session, or however many there are. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because we're in a cost of living crisis, and because I'm a kind soul, if people want to do a more expensive program with me, I'll happily look at stage payments, because I want them to get the benefit and become happier. Okay?
I know you do. But you mentioned
I'm hearing exactly what we do with mentoring in CFO. Yeah, take exactly the same approach. We'd always have a chemistry call, because I think whatever sort of coaching or mentoring you're doing, the chemistry between the individuals is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, why we've talked about AI. But in this sort of advice, I don't ever see AI becoming a threat. I always see this sort of thing as the interaction between two human beings.
Yeah. I agree. I will say that and the reason I went is because there have been experiments with robots doing therapy, and people have come out of that and gone, oh, that went quite well. But I'm with you, because I think there's something that a human being can see, hear, and feel, whether remotely or together, that I don't think AI can pick up, certainly not for some considerable time. And I think you're absolutely right. When you have two people together, you have a magic, I call it a sacred space, but with a little less, a magic space where you hold that space for that client, and change can happen because they're safe and secure and feeling supported and heard. Lots of people talk, but not everybody listens. Lots of people hear, but they don't listen. And that's the critical difference, I think. Graham, you're going to ask something. Yeah,
I was just going to refer you back to something you said earlier. You were talking about you had an upcoming book, and you're going to call it "Change Your Story: Escape from a Job You Hate and Create a Career You Love on Purpose." Now, it's coming out in early December 2023, which is a few months.
With luck.
Well, I mean, all right, let's just call it 2024. Who cares? I mean, at the end of the day, by the time somebody listens to the podcast, because they listen at different stages, it might be 5 years from now. So they might say, "Oh, crikey, that's old hat." She's written two more since. But seriously, though, somebody's read it. Mm-hmm. What would you have hoped they got from it?
aha moments, light bulb moments, and the confidence to change.
Give us an example of a aha that you would
Okay,
think they will get.
So the way it's structured is, apart from obviously the introduction, setting the scene for the world of work and the way it is now, there are 8 chapters that tell a different person's story in each. And they are people that I've actually interviewed on my podcast.
Right.
And each of those stories illustrates a particular issue, if you like, a particular theme. So chapter 1 is all about identity. So it spells the word inspired, which is my research proven coaching model. Okay. So the I is about identity. Okay, and at the bottom, after the story, a fantastic lady called Vicky, who is a single mum. She was the eldest of, second eldest of 13 kids. She ended up helping raise the family. She ended up moving out at 16, had a child, had a second child. Lots of complications, including disability. Really gritty story. And hers is the story about how she created her identity out of that. So there's a story. And then there's the practical. So if you're struggling on the identity front, here are things to go and do. So there are 3 activities in there.
You understand what that word identity means.
Yeah.
And so many people are talking about identity. I kind of block it out now because it's all kind of...
Who are you? Identity.
Right, okay. But what do you mean by that?
So exactly that. So the question is, who are you and who are you now and who do you want to become? Because there's a coaching question for each of those chapters. Chapter 1 about identity is who are you? Who do you want to become?
And the kind of answers that you would get to the who are you.
So
if I just say, if I'm me, I'd just say, well, I'm a devilishly good looking chap. Obviously, I've got a full head of hair, and basically, I'd just lie through my teeth, wouldn't I?
Pinocchio moment, yeah.
Well, yeah, but no. But you might have a sort of perspective of who you are, which isn't necessarily.
So checking it's quite useful, isn't it? So the 3 activities that are in chapter 1 are a personality test. Yeah. Okay, so you can actually get some words to answer that. Tell me about yourself in 3 to 5 words. And then you can build some examples that illustrate it. So you're already building capacity for your CV. So that's the first one. The second one looks at the influences when you grew up, and that's the values from your family, okay, and friends, where you grew up, what those influences all were, because they all inform who you become. Which political party? Was there conversation around politics? Was it down the pub or the social club or golf holidays, or what was it? All of that stuff. And then the third one looks at significant emotional experiences. Critical incidents that have happened to you. So all my clients that work on my programs, and sometimes with one-to-one coaching, depending what they need, we'll do a life graph, which is a simple XY axis, score +10, -10. And then along you map out your life in years, left to right. And then you have a chart that goes like that, because everybody's life goes up and down. And you look at the magic moments, because they're useful to help you recreate that state later on when you need confidence. So you can always go back to a magic moment and feel fantastic. And you look at the gritty moments and you go, is there anything in that might be something you want to do something about? So I'll give you an illustration. A client I worked with, this was way back in the university, which has got me into some of this stuff in the first place. She came in, she was a third year, and she was having a struggle. And a typical third year, got totally lost and detached in all of the, I've got to get a good quality degree, yada. And so she came in, I sat and I said, "You're right." And she said, "Well, I'm a bit worried about my grandma. It's all right, but I'm waiting to hear if she's free of cancer." And so we had this conversation where somebody mentions a parent or somebody they're fond of, it's significant. So I said, "Tell me a bit about your gran." So she went on talking about her gran, and she suddenly went, "I've got it. I've just remembered why I did this degree." And it was because she wanted to prevent others from going through the experience their family had done. She wanted to work on cancer. Very quickly, we went from talking about grandma to looking at postgrad qualifications, and she's now working on cancer research.
Good for her.
Having gone on and done, academic studies.
Good for you. I mean, good for you for spotting that.
All I'm doing is unpicking her story. And that's what any good career coach will do, is they'll listen and they'll go, hang on, tell me a bit more about that, dig down, and then start to make connections. So some of which will work and some might not.
This book of yours, Change Your Story,
yep.
Is it going to be frightfully expensive?
No. It's a paperback.
All right. So maybe, I don't know.
If it is, I'm skint, right?
Yeah. Well, you, presumably, it's not. You're not writing the book to make money, are you? I mean,
no, I'm not. Not at all. Yeah, it is. It's about having something out there. I can only work. I love working one-to-one. I can only work one-to-one with so many people. I've looked at scaling before. That turns me into a manager.
Yeah. Yeah,
Don't like that. That's not my sweet spot. I've done lots of it, but it's not my sweet spot. My sweet spot is a conversation like this, small group,
yeah.
one-to-one. That's the space I love working in. It took me a while to get to real clarity on that.
Yeah.
So the point of the book is to get it out to help as many people as possible who are sitting out there struggling, who might not go and see a careers advisor, might not know where to go, might not have the money, might actually be too scared to, might get given it. So that's the point of that.
In a situation where you wouldn't take your own advice, whose advice would you take about your career for the next, I don't know, 5 years?
Whose advice would I take? So who do I look to? So that's an interesting question, that, because I have a twinkle in my eye about what my next steps are already, which I'm going to keep for another day, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, you can't come on the next 100 Days podcast and keep the best bits to yourself.
Okay, so
Graham, come on, we have returning guests.
Thank you very much. I owe you a beer for that one, Kevin. A large one. So who do I take my advice from? Do you know what I have sitting around me always are stacks of books. I'm a massive reader. I love people like Seth Godin, Malcolm Gladwell, those sorts of figures who are on the cutting edge of things.
Aren't they?
Futurists, yeah. My father spent a lot of time nagging me to think quicker when I was a kid, and I used to sort of sit there and go, what are you talking about? And actually, it's invaluable because it's that horizon scanning we talked about earlier. What's coming next? Where do I go? So I'll give you a little flavour. It will still involve coaching, and obviously I'll still do career coaching, career guidance, but there's another sweet spot I have in my line of vision that I want to work on.
Let me just, it doesn't matter whether this is it or not, but basically you're obviously doing well with one-to-one, but one-to-many is obviously the dream for a lot of people who've got a lot of skill, and you've definitely got a lot of skill and a lot of opportunity to share, and your influence can go beyond your immediate one-to-one, but how you do that in a really cute way is going to be the chapter that you're going to write, presumably. Maybe, but you don't have to talk.
It's not actually, because I think there's a challenge with scaling career coaching and career guidance. It's like trying to scale mentoring. Okay. It doesn't work in the same way. You can scale selling pens because everybody has the same standard pen. Yeah. But every time you coach with somebody, it's a bespoke answer, although it's the same framework. And that's what the book's about. People read the chapter, they'll customize it to their own context, and they'll take that learning out of it because of the coaching questions that are in there.
So it's completely off base there. So let's stay at that point. But clearly, you just want to pick up a guitar and start strumming in the local pub, and that's fine. And we don't want to discourage you.
Although I do have a harp behind me, which is out of shot, that I have started playing recently. How much of a stereotype is that?
I don't know how much the pub regulars would want you to continue practicing your harp, though.
No, I mean, let's be honest. I can't ever see a time until I'm absolutely in my dotage when I've stopped coaching. But there are particular groups of individuals who I would like to develop a bespoke offer for that could scale, that is coaching in a different way. So that's the direction I'm heading in, and I know where that is. But I'm not quite ready to talk about it yet. I've got to get the book out first.
Yeah, everything in its place. I love the fact that you have a plan. Presumably, it's a little bit longer than 100 days.
Well, I think you need to have a plan in life, don't you? I mean, I also like to. I'm very much. There's an opportunity, I'll go and follow that one. And I've learned from the past that sometimes when you do that, it doesn't always take you to the best of places. So I'm doing a little bit more of longer term planning now. But that might also be that thing that we all get, I think, with the benefit of age. That's a little bit more wisdom, a little bit being a bit more wise about. Do I turn left or right here? Because we've had the experience.
Longer term planning is definitely an interesting one. And how far forward do you look in the longer term?
Well, and I'll do a sort of let's have a look for the next year, what's going to happen over the next quarters. So I'm talking with somebody about running. This isn't the thing I was talking about a minute ago, but I'm talking about somebody about running some a program for another specific group around career coaching. So that's like sort of first quarter or two next year. The project I've just been talking about that you were fishing away at, Graham, and thank you, Kevin, again, still another beer, is sort of Q2, Q3, depending on how things go with what I'm doing beforehand. So I'll look ahead, I don't know, 1 to 2 years. I don't think you can look much further than that with much certainty at the moment, because there's such a speed of change.
Yeah.
So
I've actually got
6 months
my
ago, yeah.
I've actually got my 2-year plan.
Yeah.
It's for anybody listening. It's a blank piece of paper, because to be honest with you, yes, I do have some plans, but they change.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. everybody
expects them to change.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They do.
we
have got another business. I have got another business as well. So we've got two little holiday lets that we rent out.
Yeah.
We've got a cottage through that door, and we've got a shepherd's hut, and we rent those out.
Okay.
And that was a business that changed dramatically in COVID, wasn't it? Open one day and shut the next, and then back open and rammed for days and weeks and weeks and weeks after. So I think, these days, spreading your bread across the water and having 1 or 2 or 3 directions that you're happy to expand and you maybe have activities in. I'd also say I've been very fortunate. I've been a non-exec director for quite a few years now on various organisations. And that's a great opportunity for people to meet others, to network, to make a difference, and sometimes to gain some opportunity. But that's not what should be driving you being a NED.
Absolutely
doing it for
not.
the opportunity, because that's sort of like a contradiction in terms, really. So,
well, Carolyn, we've run our course on this particular episode of the Next 100 Days. You've been a fantastic guest. Lots of information shared. Thank you, Carolyn Parry, for being a guest on the Next 100 Days.
My absolute privilege. Thank you for having me both.
Some amazing advice from a proper career coach, Graham.
Yeah. I mean, Carolyn's got so much experience to rely on, but also the way in which she helps people. Love the fact that she answered one of those questions about, almost like, what would you do? First footing, values. Get to know somebody through their values.
Yeah,
a good start.
And that word purpose is thrown about so often. And Carolyn's just explained purpose in those 3 chapters that she mentioned. Those are the 3 things you go through to work out what your purpose actually is. Powerful stuff. I'm looking forward to that book. It's going to be good.
So again, you can get Carolyn on careeralchemy.co.uk. And as you said, it's not all that expensive. So, why don't you go and check that out? And later on this year, as we're recording this, it's 2023. You'll be able to find her book, Change Your Story. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think it's something that she'll cram full of real experience. And it is actually her clients' real lived experiences. And I think you're going to like that book.
Yeah.
So today, Kevin, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.